call this meeting to order, April 10th, 2025. Our roll call with each commission member answering present. Barbara Kelly.
Present.
Patrick Rasco.
Present.
Schaefer Woods.
Present.
And I am Phyllis Chenault, board chair, and we have a quorum present. Dr. Swope is the city's preservation specialist. Thank you to everyone who is attending today. Your involvement in this commission's proceedings is vital to the effectiveness of this process. There's a copy of the agenda out front if you would like to have one. Historic district designation means your neighborhood has been recognized by the U.S. government, the state of Alabama, and the city of Decatur as being architecturally or historically significant to our community. Historic districts are not created to prevent changes, but rather to ensure that those changes are appropriate to the individual property and the district as a whole. The board's responsibility is to review the appropriateness of all proposed changes. Each historic resource within the district is assessed on its own merits, which what is appropriate for one property may not be appropriate for another based on resource age, location, neighboring properties, and stylistic details. The Architectural Review Board rulings are based on written standards and regulation that guide our review and decision making. These guidelines and the Commission's decisions have the force of city ordinance. You can access the guidelines along with application forms on the city's website. Our hearing process is as follows. Staff will present the applications. When they read your name and property address, please be prepared to come to the podium. Staff will present the application and staff assessment with each request. When staff has finished presenting the application item, the applicant and/or designated representative will then state their name and address and provide any additional information or comments regarding that application item. The board may ask clarifying questions of the applicant at this time. Next, we'll hear any public comments on that particular application item only. After public comment has closed, the chair will entertain a motion and the board will discuss and dispense with that application item. Staff will then proceed to the next application item and so forth. An approved certificate of appropriateness or COA will be issued in the form of an email that copies both the applicant and the building department approximately 1 week after this hearing. The document will outline and reaffirm what was approved and that project has been approved. COAs must be issued before building permit can be obtained. If any changes to your project are anticipated after the COA is issued, it is the responsibility of the homeowner to contact staff and she will help guide you. In some cases, you may be required to submit the changes for review and issuance of a new COA. If your project is denied and you are not issued a COA, you will be issued a letter stating the reasons for the denial and additional information. Denied COAs will be sent by certified mail to the property owner's address filed with the Morgan County Revenue Commissioner's office. You may resubmit an application with revised plans at a future meeting. There is an appeal process for denied COAs as well, which is spelled out in the municipal ordinance under sections 1825 and 1892. After all applications are heard, the commission will entertain general comments from the public, limited to 3 minutes per individual. And I do apologize for my hoarseness. I don't know what's got me. Trying to figure out through. Okay. Next item is the approval of the minutes of the March 20th meeting. We have a motion.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. Motion by Barker, second.
I'll second.
Second by Spade. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. COA since the March meeting, Dr. Stroke.
615 Oak Street, replace rotting trim on the front and doors at rear and behind. 1051 Jackson Street, replacing approximately 28 linear feet of rotting siding in kind. 504 Line Street, repair historic windows and replace rotting trim in kind. 409 Oak, a new rear yard wood fence.
And the new COA review.
Okay, so for our COA this evening, we have 702 Oak Street. This is an old Decatur. This is the site. It's pulled up on the municipal map. And so it's both the house and there's a vacant lot behind it that is now part of this site. So it's a large yard behind it. And this is the house currently. And this is where they have a fence that is at the end of its life and they would like to replace it. So it's an American Foursquare house that's a contributing resource in the Old Decatur Historic District. It sits on the corner of Oak and Vine. The action request that is install a 96-foot long brick wall along the Vine Street elevation in 16-foot sections. Wall will be 5 foot 6 inches high. The matching wall panels, short and length, will connect the Vine Street elevation to the house. Brick piers will support the columns and be 6 foot 4 inches in height, 16-inch square with a detailed brick cap. The brick will be Covington or Cherokee brick. The proposed wall will have 2 wood gates, a single gate width and height not provided in the initial application facing Oak Street, and a 12-foot wide double gate at the Vine Street elevation near the end of the property boundary. There's no formal submittal or gate design at this time. The proposed wall setback is 18 inches from the sidewalk for ground cover. And so this is the full length. This is the plan that was in your packet. These are details of various cedar gates. This is a specific brick that they call out in the application. And then they had images of these existing brick walls in the district. The one in Old Decatur on Cherry Street is a 1960s or 70s wall that predates the district. The one in Albany is an older wall that predates the district information I found as well. Let's see if I can go back. This design review standards 16.9 contemporary or utilitarian fence materials are not appropriate for fences in public view. Vinyl, chain link wire, wood plank, solid brick, or open weave brick are not appropriate materials for fences in public view, but may be installed for rear and side yards not readily visible. I have been asked to identify other large fencing runs within the perimeter of this, so I looked at neighbors across the street, neighbors behind, and then county corner on Line and Line. They all have very tall privacy fences, but they are all wood privacy fences. So the one you're seeing here on the bottom left, that is adjacent to the one that continues. That's Sumner Line. The one in the upper right is 618 Oak, which is across Harmon Street from them. And then one block over is 618 Line. This is on the Vine Street portion of that particular elevation. The proposed wall will run for almost 100 feet along Vine, which is in full public view. The guidelines state that solid brick walls are not appropriate for public view. I went back and looked through records. I did not find full fences, full walls of brick that have been approved that we knew for several years of records. The only thing I could find were small sections of pre-existing walls that have been patched. And of course, this was under the design to hear if you have questions for them. Oh, I should add, I'm sorry, I didn't ask. I reached out to the landscape architect that we were planning to ask how they interpreted the design review standards to come up with the brick wall. They were not familiar with the design review guidelines for the city. They had not looked at them. So I did check on that as well.
Well, that was because he did what we asked him to do. He's our son-in-law.
And have they gotten back to you, anything revised?
Yeah.
What was that, Ellis? I didn't understand.
Ask if the design firm had gotten back with Caroline.
Well, they spoke, but he was just drawing what we asked him to draw. We didn't ask him to revise it.
Alice, would you like them to come up to the podium so that they can be on the mic and they can answer any questions that you might have?
I want to give y'all just a little bit of history. I know everybody here, but Julie and I have lived in the 2 historical districts for almost 30 years. We've owned this house since 2001, and we converted it from a apartment, a fourplex, to a single-family home. And that back lot that you'll see, the second to 210 Vine Street, had a house on it that we tore down in 2012, at which time we built this fence. And so, anyway, we've obviously done a lot, taken a lot of pride in our house. And when we began to, this fence, our daughter was married here, we redid the fence, stained it. But anyway, it's gotten dilapidated, it needs to be redone. So we began to look at redoing it. And I contacted Carolyn about a wood fence, but we began to think, what about a brick wall? Because how long they last. This is our 3rd fence to put up here. Doesn't look good. I don't think the one behind us, being wood, looks that good. It's less than a year old. So we started looking at erecting a brick wall, and they last forever. And we were told, well, they're not appropriate, historically appropriate, especially on a street elevation. So we began to look at that, and as we began to go around the neighborhood, I'm assuming there's something about age here as to go, but we began to look, and if you look at page 12 of the guidelines yourself, it shows Line Street. If y'all have the guidelines, or I don't know if you can pull them up, but the guidelines you all use, page 12, there's a rendering of Line Street looking north towards the river, and there's brick walls going up both sides of that street. You don't want to look at it. I've got a picture of it here. But anyway, and so we began to look more and more at brick walls, and they're all over the neighborhood. There's 50-something in both neighborhoods, and there's probably over 10 that are on street elevations. So our point is why would you not allow a brick wall or a brick fence? What's the difference between wood and brick? I don't really know. You can't see through either one of them. Wood, treated lumber, how long has that been around? Brick's been used since 7000 BC. So our point is, I don't understand why you cannot use brick as a fence. You call it a wall, let's call it a fence, whatever you want to debate. So that's kind of our point. What's the difference? Mrs. Swopes can approve a wood fence without even bringing it in front of you, right? But you won't allow us, or there's guidelines that say you can't have a brick wall. What's the difference, in my opinion? Barbara's got a beautiful brick wall. We went and looked at it. Carolyn, you've got a brick wall behind your house. There's brick walls all over our neighborhoods. They've been there forever, a long time, centuries maybe. And these wood fences, how long do they last? So that's our argument. We want to put a brick wall. We can afford to build a brick wall. It will be beautiful. You all know me, you know Julie, you know we'll do a good job. We've gone and talked to the brick people. They said the brick that we picked is old size there's a modular and there's engineered. I don't remember which one. But whatever one we're picking at is more expensive because there's less of them to make the walls harder. It's more expensive to lay and more mortar and all. That's not that big a deal. But the brick and the size does make it more expensive. And so, but that was the people at the brick yard said that's because that's what they was used. That's a size brick that was used back historically in the old days, not the larger brick. So anyway, so to our argument, there's brick walls all over this neighborhood, these neighborhoods, 50 plus, go count them. Go ride around, when you're riding around, go look at the wood fences and how they look compared to the brick walls. That's number one. Number two, they've been there forever. You're in your own guidelines on page 12. You show the brick wall at both sides of Line Street. And lastly, did y'all know the old State Bank had a brick wall around it? The old State Bank had a brick wall around it. Did y'all know that?
Yeah.
Piercing brick. So they've been around forever. So we would like to build a brick wall. If it's an exception we're asking for an exception to build a brick wall. And this committee and committees before you have allowed exceptions before. I mean, there's a house that somebody, you know, our neighbor has two houses on two different lots, and there's a dog truck between them. That had to be an exception. So that's what we're here for. That's all I got, unless you got some questions.
I don't know if I can answer all your questions today that you asked. There's a lot of whys in there. I don't know the history of every single thing that ever happened in Decatur. I do know that we have some guidelines that had a lot of input from people in the district that was done in 2023. And of those guidelines, there are two that talk about brick, stone, concrete, some of those things being in fence materials. And in those two sections, they're talking about them not being appropriate. And we have to rule based on, or look at these based on to help with our decision-making process. Yes, each property does have the ability to have adjustments. There could be hardships. There could be things that we have to look at the individual property. And we do that to the best of our ability. For me, this is a black and white thing. It's telling me it's not appropriate. I don't have anything that's showing me a spot that I can make an exception. You know, when I go through the code and I look at it, a lot of times exceptions are listed and I just don't have one for me.
So back up again. So what are you, I'm not, you've had.
Like in 16.5, it says, stone, brick, or concrete bases are not appropriate for any fencing or anything that is readily visible from street vantage. And I think being visible from a street vantage is really important. Yeah, there's things that go in people's backyards that you can't see that we allow. Then the 16.9 talks about the materials of fencing, walls, whatever you want to define that as.
Define a base. What do you mean by base?
Well, 16.5 talks about if you did a column or a base that's wood, or brick, stone, or concrete, and the rest of the fence is wood, that's something that is also described as not appropriate.
Well, how have y'all allowed that then?
We have,
Since 23?
yes.
So this is only since 23.
I don't know what the old guidelines had in it, but these were rewritten and approved by the city in 23. That's what I have to go by.
So prior to that, brick walls were allowed or
I
not?
don't know, and before the district was formed and before we had guidelines, there was a lot of freedom to do a lot of different things. But then at some point, the guidelines were created, and it's to help preserve the history that's here.
I mean, okay.
Well, I mean,
Well, that's just.
There's just no
there's-
argue.
There's 3 other people in common, that's just my comment from.
So in your comment then, what's the difference between brick and wood? I know, well, you can't see through this wall, that house, this fence behind me. What's the difference between having pressure-treated lumber and brick making up a fence?
It's a different material, and the guidelines say that one's allowed and one is not.
But no reason? I mean, there's no, when you've had brick walls used for years, there's no argument here? Just black and white?
Black and white.
One of the things that we that have corner houses, a lot of things would be allowed on the side of your house. Typically would not be allowed, or would be allowed because it's on the side of your house. The fact that it's on a corner, that would be an exception because it's on a corner. It's almost like, okay, we would be more penalized to not be allowed to do something on our side of a street in deference to the front elevation.
all around us, we've got pictures, like there's 6 in our neighborhood now. It's just 2 streets this way, and 2 streets this way, and 2 streets this way. Stone, brick, all on side yards.
And
And even the brick and stone base that are all relatively, I mean, there's been so many.
I mean, I guess if you're saying it's just black and white, what recourse do we have? But at some point, logically, you kind of have some logic here, right? I mean,
the logic went into producing the
well, they're wrong. They're wrong. At some point, that's wrong.
Jeff, can I interrupt real quick? Caroline, can you speak a little bit, the guidelines on that, on the use? Is that based on historical significance or aesthetics?
The guidelines are based on historical significance and not aesthetics. And so, for example, the brick wall that was referred to as Old State Bank, that was actually removed from the bank because it did not have historical significance, and the restoration architect removed it for that reason when they were restoring it. There are lots of brick walls within the district. The majority of them were from the 60s, and the one at my house is from that time period. 60s and 70s, there was a lot of new construction within the district, and that's how the districts were created, is when the neighborhood said they didn't want to see those changes, and they pushed back. I believe there was some new brick maybe in the early 80s or 90s. There was some discussion of that when we updated the guidelines a few years ago. And so the consultant went in, and that came up also with the brick wall that was in the front yard of Mr. Kennedy's property that was early in your term, where there was a lot of discussion about, yes, if you were in New Orleans or Charleston, they absolutely have a tradition in those particular cities of brick walls, but Decatur did not have a historic tradition within the neighborhoods of the brick walls. And so that discussion came up with that particular one the council met with, and then also they asked for clarifying information and level setting with the community and maybe set of guidelines that we use there.
That picture on Line Street, though, is from 1939, and one of them you can see plain as day. Jeff, look at that.
They've seen it. You talking about the rendering?
Of the brick wall all the way down Line Street. I mean, lots of the houses in our neighborhood were built in the early 90s.
And I guess the other thing more current is what about Nancy Greenhalgh's or whatever her brick, that wall she was approved for, and Glenn Tubb. And I mean, Glenn's been probably 20 years, but Nancy Greenhall's been in the last 10. The one that's stuccoed and brick at the top is block, stuccoed, and then brick. She's supposed to be putting in gates next to Lynn Schupert's.
It's not a corner block, but
I
it's
know,
certainly.
but it's
faces
visible
up
from the
north.
street. It's no different, in my opinion. So anyway.
I'm familiar with the story on that one, because that was right around the time I started, but even right before I started, it was right in that beginning. I don't created such a disturbance within the community over even that being approved. That is one of the reasons that they asked for level setting on masonry walls after that.
It was her neighbor that was so annoyed.
All right, any questions?
Anything else? Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the COA.
I'll second.
Jacob seconds. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed, say nay. Nay. That's, motion fails to carry, 4 ayes to 0.
I heard 3, but I didn't hear Patrick. Did you vote?
Can I abstain?
Unless you have a personal financial relationship, in which case then you may be opted out, but you do need to vote.
No.
So that's 4
I
nays.
voted yes. Okay.
So we can get wood fence tomorrow, right, Carolyn?
I can sign off on those things.
That
Polling.
is appalling.
Unless it's horizontal.
That's appalling.
And so our appeal process is,
I'll send out a letter, I'll start next week, with this information on that.
Thank y'all.
Thank you. Lady.
As for compliance updates, 301 Oak Street, they had a deadline to meet compliance with the internet fence size in February. That has not been met. Let's see, okay, I'll come back to that one. I'm going to do these two first for a reason. 812 Johnston Street, that's one where they needed to plant some evergreen screening and change the roofing to asphalt. That was actually due several months ago. They have not met that either. So I'm meeting with the prosecuting attorney tomorrow to start these two into the legal system. Then this one, which Jacob and I worked with the property owner, 316 Lafayette, if you recall, it was a carport and where it was going to be sited. And we did come up with a plan for one where there would be a fence, and then the carport was going to be moved and pushed behind the house, and it was going to be turned as well, so you'd enter it from the alley, and it was going to be, and so Jacob and I worked with him on that. And that was in January, I think, Jacob, but there hasn't been any motion on it. Now, typically when we have a COA that's not approved, there's a deadline to bring it into compliance. In this case, the deadline was to submit a new plan, which was submitted, it was approved, but they haven't moved forward with it, which means the carport portion is still out of compliance. I have reached out to them to sort of ask, because it's been about 3 months now, which is normally when we see things in motion. But if I do not hear back from him, then I will have it on the agenda for next month to have the board vote on a deadline for bringing it into compliance and how long he has before it goes into the legal system. So are there any questions on these 3?
I guess just a reminder on that one, the COA was sent to move the carport and to install a fence. So it's both. So both of those things have to be done to make this particular one compliant. And he did present a drawing, we got all that approved, but we never really gave him a time frame, which we need to do, because it's still
Well, we
sitting away.
normally do because it's bringing something back into compliance. But on this, the stuff was he had to meet with us outside, which he did, but then we didn't have a way to give him a deadline. So, but I hear back from him in the next few weeks, and then, we'll get the project moving. If not, I can bring it back to the next month.
What was the date of that?
Well, we didn't have a date that was agreed. Because
That you spoke of?
I think we met it, was it January, Jake? And I think he had until January to have a COA that was approved. He got one that was approved, but we never came back on the timeline because the approval was because something was out of compliance. So it's typically they're one or the other. This one was unusual because it had both. questions? Anything else we need to cover?
Well, then I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, Barbara, all those in favor, stand up, leave.
No.
That's 4 ayes.